You find yourself standing in the shadows of the Forbidden City in the year of 1596, watching as a tiny figure in elaborate silk robes is carried through the massive red gates in a golden palanquin. The child cannot be more than 7 years old, yet she wears the ceremonial headdress of an empress, its weight seeming too much for her delicate neck. This is Xiao Duan, and today she becomes the bride of the most powerful man in the world, the Wanli Emperor, ruler of Ming China's 60 million subjects. The servants who carry her palanquin whisper prayers under their breath, not in celebration, but in mourning for the childhood that ends today. The marriage ceremony you are witnessing represents more than just the union of two people. It is the culmination of centuries of Chinese imperial tradition, where the emperor's personal life serves the cosmic order itself. Every aspect of this child's future has been calculated by court astronomers, negotiated by ministers, and approved by the emperor's mother, the formidable Empress Dowager Chisheng. Xiao Duan's small hands, barely visible beneath layers of ceremonial silk, will soon hold the fate of the Ming dynasty itself. Empress Xiao Duangxian was born Wang Xijie in 1589, during the 13th year of the Wanli Emperor's reign. Her father, Wang Weiguo, was a low-ranking military officer from Daxing County, just outside Beijing. The Wang family lived in modest circumstances, far removed from the opulent world of the imperial court. Wang Xijie spent her earliest years in a simple courtyard house, playing with wooden toys and learning basic characters from her grandmother, completely unaware that destiny would soon tear her away from this humble life. The selection process that would change her life forever began when she was just 6 years old. The Ming court maintained an elaborate system for choosing imperial consorts, a process that combined political calculation with supposed divine guidance. Every few years, commissioners would be sent throughout the empire to identify suitable candidates for the emperor's household. These men looked for specific qualities, beauty certainly, but also proper ancestry, auspicious birth dates, and what court documents described as virtuous deportment. When the commissioners arrived in Daxing County in 1595, they examined hundreds of young girls from families of appropriate social standing. The process was methodical and impersonal. Girls were measured, their faces studied for symmetry, their family histories investigated for any hint of scandal or disloyalty. Wang Xijie, at 6 years old, possessed the delicate features and composed manner that caught the commissioner's attention. Her selection was not based on any personal qualities the emperor might have preferred, but on her conformity to an ancient template of imperial beauty and virtue. The news of her selection reached the Wang family like a thunderbolt. In Chinese culture, having a daughter chosen for the imperial household was considered the highest honor imaginable. It meant elevation from obscurity to the pinnacle of society, wealth beyond their wildest dreams, and the possibility that their bloodline might produce future emperors. But for Wang Xijie's mother, the honor came with heartbreak. She would lose her daughter to a world where family bonds were secondary to imperial duty, where a child's natural development would be shaped entirely by court protocol. The transformation of Wang Xijie into a future empress began immediately. Palace tutors arrived at the family compound to begin her education in court etiquette, classical literature, and the complex rituals that governed imperial life. She learned to walk with the gliding step required of palace women, to speak in the formal language of the court, and to suppress any spontaneous emotional expression that might be deemed inappropriate. Her diet was regulated, her sleep scheduled, and her playtime eliminated entirely. At 6 years old, she was being molded into a living embodiment of imperial ideology. The Wanli Emperor, born Zhu Yijun, was 24 years old when his future bride was selected. He had ruled China for 23 years, having ascended to the throne at the age of 10 following his father's death. His reign had been marked by military campaigns, bureaucratic reforms, and an increasingly complex relationship with the Confucian scholars who served as his advisors. By 1596, he was already showing signs of the reclusiveness that would characterize his later years, withdrawing from daily court ceremonies and governing through written edicts rather than personal appearances. The emperor's decision to take a new primary consort was not driven by personal desire, but by dynastic necessity. His existing wives had produced several children, but court astrologers and ministers argued that the empire required a fresh infusion of cosmic energy through a new marriage. The selection of such a young bride was unusual even by Ming standards, but it reflected the emperor's advisor's belief that a girl raised entirely within the palace would be perfectly molded to serve imperial purposes. The wedding ceremony itself was a spectacle of unprecedented grandeur. The Forbidden City was decorated with thousands of red lanterns, symbolizing joy and prosperity. Dragons embroidered in golden thread adorned every surface, while incense burned continuously in the palace's numerous temples. The ceremony followed rituals that had been refined over centuries, each gesture and word carrying symbolic weight that connected the earthly marriage to the cosmic order itself. Xiao Duan, dressed in layers of silk so heavy she could barely move, was carried to the ceremony in a palanquin decorated with phoenixes, the mythical birds that symbolized the Empress. The 7-year-old bride sat motionless throughout the lengthy proceedings, her face painted with white cosmetics that made her appear like a porcelain doll. Contemporary accounts describe her as maintaining perfect composure despite the overwhelming nature of the ceremony, a testament to the intensive training she had received. The Wanli Emperor, resplendent in his dragon robes, performed his part of the ceremony with the practiced efficiency of someone who had participated in countless court rituals. For him, this was less a wedding than a state function, another duty required by his position as son of heaven. The vast age difference between bride and groom was not remarked upon in official records, as such considerations were irrelevant to the cosmic significance of the union. Following the ceremony, Xiao Duan was installed in her own palace compound within the Forbidden City, staffed with dozens of servants, tutors, and officials responsible for her continued education and care. Her daily routine was regulated down to the smallest detail. She woke at dawn for meditation and prayer, spent her mornings studying classical texts, her afternoons practicing calligraphy and music, and her evenings receiving instruction in palace protocol. Every aspect of her existence was designed to transform her from a child into the perfect imperial consort. The relationship between the young empress and her husband was necessarily complex. The Wanli Emperor visited her quarters regularly, but these encounters were formal affairs governed by elaborate protocol. He would inquire about her studies, observe her progress in various accomplishments, and occasionally bring her gifts from across the empire. There was no possibility of the casual intimacy that might develop between spouses in ordinary circumstances. Every interaction was witnessed by servants and recorded by court historians. As Xiao Duan grew older, her education expanded to include the political and administrative knowledge she would need as empress. She learned about the structure of the Ming government, the empire's economic systems, and the complex relationships between the court and the provinces. Her tutors, some of the most learned scholars in the empire, found her to be an exceptionally intelligent student with a remarkable ability to grasp complex concepts quickly. By the age of 12, Xiao Duan had become a formidable presence within the palace, despite her youth. She had mastered the art of court politics, understanding how to navigate the complex web of relationships that governed life in the Forbidden City. Her influence began to extend beyond her own household as other consorts and palace officials sought her favor. She had learned to use her position not just for personal advancement, but to advocate for causes she believed in, particularly the welfare of the palace servants and the education of other young women in the imperial household. The Empress's relationship with the Wanli Emperor evolved as she matured. What had begun as a formal arrangement between an adult man and a child gradually developed into something approaching a genuine partnership. The emperor came to value her intelligence and judgment, consulting her on matters of state and court policy. She became one of the few people who could speak to him directly about sensitive subjects, a privilege that carried both power and danger. Xiao Duan's influence reached its peak during the later years of the Wanli Emperor's reign, when his increasing reclusiveness made her one of the most important intermediaries between the throne and the court. She managed much of the emperor's correspondence, helped select candidates for important positions, and served as his representative in ceremonies he chose not to attend personally. Her transformation from a 7-year-old bride into a powerful political figure was complete. The Empress's later years were marked by her efforts to preserve and strengthen the Ming dynasty for future generations. She played a crucial role in the education of the crown prince, ensuring that he received not just the traditional classical education, but also practical knowledge about governance and military affairs. Her influence on the succession process helped ensure a smooth transition when the Wanli Emperor died in 1620. Throughout her life, Xiao Duan maintained connections to her birth family, using her position to advance their fortunes while never forgetting her humble origins. She established schools and charitable institutions, funded scholarly projects, and supported artists and craftsmen. Her reign as empress was marked by a flowering of court culture and a strengthening of the imperial administration. The story of Empress Xiao Duangxian challenges our modern understanding of childhood, marriage, and power in ways that are both disturbing and fascinating. Her life illustrates the complex reality of imperial China, where individual desires were subordinated to dynastic needs, but where exceptional individuals could still carve out spaces for agency and influence. Her transformation from a 7-year-old bride into one of the most powerful women in Chinese history represents both the constraints and possibilities that defined life in the Ming court. As her influence within the imperial court continued to grow, Empress Xiao Duangxian found herself navigating increasingly complex political waters. The year 1600 marked a turning point in her relationship with the Wanli Emperor, as his prolonged absences from court created a power vacuum that she skillfully filled. While courtiers whispered about the emperor's retreat to his private chambers, Xiao Duangxian quietly assumed responsibilities that would have been unthinkable for an empress just decades earlier. Her daily routine became a careful choreography of political maneuvering and diplomatic finesse. Each morning, she would receive reports from the various ministries, reviewing matters of state that ranged from provincial tax collection to military deployments along the northern frontier. The ministers, initially hesitant to discuss such weighty matters with a woman, gradually came to respect her sharp intellect and practical wisdom. She had an uncanny ability to identify the underlying tensions in complex situations and propose solutions that satisfied multiple competing interests. The Empress's influence extended far beyond the walls of the Forbidden City. Through her extensive network of correspondence, she maintained communication with provincial governors, military commanders, and even foreign diplomats. Her letters, written in elegant calligraphy and sealed with her personal mark, carried weight throughout the empire. Local officials understood that earning the Empress's favor could advance their careers, while her displeasure could mean political exile or worse. Perhaps most remarkably, Xiao Duangxian began to reshape the very nature of imperial ceremonies and protocols. She introduced new rituals that emphasized the Empress's role as a bridge between the earthly realm and the divine mandate of heaven. During important state occasions, she would appear alongside the emperor, not as a silent ornament, but as an active participant in the governance of the realm. Her presence lent legitimacy to imperial decisions and helped maintain the fiction that the emperor remained fully engaged with his duties. The empress's relationship with the imperial bureaucracy was complex and often fraught with tension. Many officials, steeped in Confucian traditions that relegated women to subordinate roles, resented having to seek approval from a female ruler. Yet they could not ignore the practical reality that Xiao Duangxian controlled access to the emperor and wielded significant influence over policy decisions. Some adapted by developing elaborate protocols for interacting with her that maintained the appearance of propriety while acknowledging her actual authority. Her management of the imperial household became legendary among court observers. The Forbidden City housed thousands of people, from high-ranking nobles to humble servants, and maintaining harmony among such diverse groups required exceptional diplomatic skills. Xiao Duangxian established clear hierarchies and procedures that minimized conflicts while ensuring that everyone understood their roles and responsibilities. She created systems for resolving disputes, distributing resources, and maintaining discipline that would serve as models for future administrations. The Empress's educational background proved invaluable as she began to influence imperial policy on a broader scale. Her deep understanding of classical literature and historical precedents allowed her to frame her suggestions in terms that resonated with traditional Chinese values while subtly introducing innovations. She advocated for reforms in agricultural policy, arguing that supporting farmers would strengthen the empire's foundation. Her proposals for improving the examination system that selected government officials reflected her belief that merit should take precedence over birth or connections. Financial management became another area where Xiao Duangxian's influence was deeply felt. The imperial treasury faced constant pressures from military campaigns, natural disasters, and the enormous costs of maintaining the imperial court. The Empress worked closely with the Ministry of Revenue to develop more efficient tax collection methods and reduce wasteful spending. Her personal frugality, which contrasted sharply with the extravagance of previous empresses, helped set a tone of fiscal responsibility that gradually permeated the entire administration. The Empress's relationship with the military was particularly delicate, given the traditional Chinese suspicion of female involvement in martial affairs. However, she recognized that the empire's security depended on maintaining effective armed forces, and she worked carefully to build relationships with key military leaders. Rather than attempting to directly command troops, she focused on ensuring that the military had adequate resources and that competent officers were promoted based on merit rather than political connections. Her influence on foreign policy was perhaps most evident in the empire's dealings with tributary states and foreign envoys. Xiao Duangxian understood that diplomacy required a careful balance of strength and flexibility, and she helped develop policies that maintained Chinese supremacy while avoiding unnecessary conflicts. Her reception of foreign ambassadors became elaborate affairs designed to demonstrate the empire's wealth and power while gathering intelligence about potential threats or opportunities. The Empress's charitable activities expanded dramatically during this period, reflecting both her personal compassion and her understanding of the political benefits of being seen as a benevolent ruler. She established hospitals, schools, and relief programs that provided assistance to the empire's most vulnerable citizens. These initiatives not only alleviated suffering, but also helped build popular support for the imperial government and created networks of loyal supporters throughout the realm. As the years passed, Xiao Duangxian's transformation from child bride to powerful ruler became an inspiration to other women within the imperial court. She carefully mentored younger consorts and female relatives, teaching them the skills necessary to navigate the treacherous waters of palace politics. Her example demonstrated that women could wield significant influence while maintaining the appearance of conformity to traditional gender roles. The Empress's health remained generally good throughout this period, though the constant stress of her responsibilities took its toll. She developed elaborate routines for maintaining her physical and mental well-being, including regular exercise, meditation, and periods of retreat from court duties. Her personal physicians, some of the most skilled in the empire, helped her maintain the energy and focus necessary for her demanding schedule. Her relationship with the emperor evolved from one of mutual respect to something approaching genuine partnership. While they maintained separate residences and followed the formal protocols required by their positions, they developed a working relationship based on shared goals and complementary skills. The emperor's withdrawal from active governance allowed Xiao Duangxian to assume greater responsibilities, while her success in managing those responsibilities validated his decision to trust her with such authority. The Empress's legacy during this period was not merely political, but cultural as well. She sponsored artists, poets, and scholars, creating a renaissance of intellectual activity within the imperial court. Her patronage helped preserve and transmit classical Chinese culture while also encouraging innovation and creativity. The works produced under her sponsorship would influence Chinese art and literature for generations to come. As Xiao Duangxian entered her 30s, she had accomplished something unprecedented in Chinese history. Without formal title or constitutional authority, she had become the de facto ruler of the world's most populous empire. Her journey from a 6-year-old girl selected for an arranged marriage to one of the most powerful women in Chinese history represented a remarkable triumph of intelligence, determination, and political skill over the constraints imposed by tradition and gender expectations. The Empress's story during these crucial years demonstrates the complex ways in which individual agency could operate within highly structured political systems. Her success required not only exceptional personal qualities, but also the ability to work within existing institutions while gradually reshaping them to accommodate her expanding role. Her legacy would influence Chinese politics and society long after her death, proving that even in the most restrictive circumstances, remarkable individuals could transcend the limitations of their time and leave lasting impacts on history